So what do we know about what has gone on in Belgorod?
The harsh reality is very little at the moment, Mark. The governor of Belgorod has announced that the Ukrainian sabotage unit has operated near the border up to with Belgorod up there. Unfortunately, the Ukrainians have turned around and said it's got nothing to do with us. The Kremlin have turned around and said this is definitely Ukrainian forces. They're trying to distract from our success down in Bakhmut. There's also suggestions that Russian opposition groups that are generally based across in Ukraine might be responsible as well. We've seen some footage of some smoke and some explosions around the border area, but we're unable to verify that footage at the moment. But it's evident that something is going on the ground. But the truth is we don't know at the moment, and rather than speculate, we'll provide more information when we get it.
Yeah, it's all pretty curious at the moment. What about Bakhmut? We do know more about that. I mean, it's been a long period of fighting and now conflicting claims about who's in control.
Yeah, a grinding war of attrition lasted for 11 months. And funny old thing, but they finally delivered, Wagner Group's finally delivered a victory for Putin, a long-awaited victory. But it's a somewhat Pyrrhic victory, given the huge cost in lives and the devastation left behind. The Wagner Group's been doing the lion's share of the fighting, and it's no great surprise that Yevgeny Prigozhin declared victory slightly early, probably, because he did not want the Russian army to claim credit for this. It's worth remembering Putin very rarely gives credit to the Wagner Group for any of the successes, probably because private military companies are actually illegal in Russia. What Yevgeny has now turned around and said is that he will hand over to the Russian army in Bakhmut, give his forces a chance to have a bit of a breather. But it's worth noting that actually in Bakhmut, around the flanks, the Russian army have been responsible for the north and the south, looking after the north and the south, whereas the Wagner Group have been going through the middle. The Ukrainians have been very successful at pushing back the Russian army. If they were to capitalise on the fact there's a transfer of power within Bakhmut, it's quite possible the Ukrainians will continue and actually encircle Bakhmut in the fullness of time. And given that the city has been levelled, that would place the Russian forces in a very difficult position. Now, it's a long way off that, but let's just say I'm not sure the battle for Bakhmut is over entirely yet.
Right, now you're an Air Force man. We've heard very little about the air war in Ukraine. Now we are told that Ukraine may be getting F-16s. What do we expect, a new period of an air war? What have the Russians got? What do you think is going to happen?
It's been fascinating because, as you say, as an ex-airman, I've been constantly going, where is the Russian Air Force here? The news has been dominated by the F-16 decision. They won't appear in Ukraine until next year, but it was no coincidence that the Russians have announced they're forming an elite attack aviation group. It'll be formed of Su-24 fighters. They're a 1960s vintage fighter over there. The Su-35, which is a 2014 fighter here, and also attack helicopters, all designed to do close air support. In other words, they're designed to have a go at the Ukrainian forces on the ground as they mount their attack. They're even recruiting, apparently, retired aviation guys to fly these things, which is really odd because you think any Air Force worth its salt would actually have close air support at its core role. And really that just shows the parlous state of the Air Force. They're having to recruit people to do what should be a core role in the Air Force.
Right, and the first F-16s getting there when, roughly, do you think?
I don't think it'll be about the F-16s, to be brutally honest. I think it's about the capability. There are several nations who recently retired F-16s. They're available now. It's just the pilots, the logistics, the weapons, the armourers, the spares.
Okay.
Next year, I predict, is when we're going to see those aircraft in Ukraine.